Test 1, 2, 3. Test 1, 2, 3.
Begin the meeting in 1 minute. Good morning, everyone. If you want to get ready, we're going to start the meeting here. Welcome to the 33rd meeting of the Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee meeting, or the Rural Affairs Committee. I'd like to call the meeting to order. We have received regrets from Councillor Kitts, who's unable to make it today, but I will ask that the coordinator do the roll call. Thank you.
Councillor Kitts, Councillor Luloff.
Good morning.
Councillor Skalski.
Here.
Chair, Vice Chair Brown. Today.
Here.
And Chair Kelly.
Thank you very much. And perhaps I will start on that note. Most people will, who are tuning in today, realize that I am not the chair of the Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee, but I do appreciate our chair, David Brown, allowing me to chair a meeting and get some experience doing so. So I want to thank him for that. I will begin our meeting today on behalf of Ottawa City Council. I wish to acknowledge that Ottawa is built on the unceded Anishinaabe Algonquin territory. The peoples of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation have lived on this territory for millennia, and their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. Item number 2, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? No. Seeing none. Confirmation of minutes are the minutes from the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee meeting of Thursday, March 5th confirmed.
Confirmed.
Thank you. Our first item of substance, item 4.1, actually that's a response to inquiry. There is a response to inquiry that was raised by Councillor Skalski at the City Council meeting of August 27th, 2025. It's my understanding that she does not wish to hold that item, so we can move on. Strategic Initiatives Department. This actually is our first item of substance, the Ottawa Rural Clean Water Program. We do have a staff presentation. There are no delegations registered to speak. And yes, there is one delegate registered to speak. My apologies. But we'll start with the staff presentation and then we'll move to delegates. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, Chair and committee members. I'll just wait for the slides to get up there. Are we good to go? I think so. Okay, perfect. Thank you. My name is Tara Redpath, and I'm a senior planner with our Natural Systems team in the City of Ottawa's Strategic Initiatives Department. And I'm joined today by Nick Stowe, who is Program Manager of Natural Systems. I also coordinate the Ottawa Rural Clean Water Program on behalf of the city and in partnership with our 3 local conservation authorities. Today's presentation will provide a summary of the program and of the 5-year review that was undertaken to evaluate the program's performance over the years of 2021 to 2025. The key recommendations for renewing and improving the program for the next 5-year period, 2026 to 2030, will also be covered. Next slide, please. So the Ottawa Rural Clean Water Program is a long-standing program that provides cost share grants to farmers and rural landowners for projects that protect surface water and groundwater quality. The program offers grants of up to $15,000 for 19 different project types that can be generally categorized under nutrient management, soil protection, water management, land stewardship, and education and innovation. The administration and delivery of this program is done through a partnership with our 3 local conservation authorities, being South Nation, Rideau Valley, and Mississippi Valley. We also have 2 review committees that meet quarterly to review and approve projects, while a program committee provides direction to the program and on the design and delivery of the program. The program also has an annual budget of $200,000, and this is funded through a special levy to South Nation Conservation. The program was last renewed in 2021 for a 5-year period. Promotion of the program occurs in a variety of ways, such as mail drops, social media posts, newsletter posts through councillor and city staff or city newsletters, ads in local agricultural newspapers, as well as in person at public events and fairs. Next slide, please. So the map there on the screen is showing the locations of all projects that were completed between 2021 to 2025. And that was a total of 271 projects. The total grant value for those projects was just over $671,000. And in addition to that, landowners contributed approximately $1 million of their own dollars invested in these projects. The projects with the highest uptake over this period included forest management plans, erosion control, natural windbreaks and watercourse buffers, as well as well decommissioning. So many of the forest management plans, which you can see in the purple dots there on the screen, were completed in areas of Ottawa with higher forest cover and less productive agricultural lands. And we see projects taking place across all rural wards in that category. The erosion control projects show up as the orange dots. We had many projects to create or enhance natural windbreaks and watercourse buffers as well, which are shown in blue. So you can see a cluster of those blue erosion control projects, and then the orange erosion control and the blue windbreaks and buffers along a stretch of the Rideau River there as well, south of Manotick. And a lot of these were completed on rural residential properties. Well decommissioning projects, which are shown in lime green, took place in all rural wards, as well as even a few urban sites. Next slide, please. So just to highlight some of the key things that were resulted from this program, there's been some important gains in protecting water quality in rural Ottawa. So we have over 450 hectares of farmland have improved nutrient management with precision farming techniques and nutrient management plans. Over this period, we saw 112,000 trees planted along nearly 7 kilometers of watercourses or as part of natural windbreaks. We also had 1,752 hectares of forest protected through forest management plans. And the last thing to highlight is that the risk of surface and groundwater contamination was greatly reduced at 55 sites across Ottawa. And one last thing I wanted to highlight for the program from the past 5 years is that in 2021, we introduced a brand new project type for wetland restoration. And we've since seen 3 projects for restoring wetlands completed, and an additional 5 projects are currently underway. So the photos there on the screen show one of the wetland projects that was undertaken in Osgood Ward. The top photo is showing the newly created ponds, and then the bottom photo shows the wetland vegetation and the buffer area that is already beginning to establish. Next slide, please. So the approach that we took for this review included holding interviews with Conservation Authority staff, as well as city staff with related expertise. In addition, we sent online surveys to all program committee and review committee members, as well as all past program participants, so those who received grants through this program. A scan was carried out for 34 similar programs that are taking place across Ontario to summarize trends from those programs. So in general, the Ottawa program is very highly regarded, and it's being very well administered by our Conservation Authority partners. The feedback that we received from past participants was very positive. However, there were some areas noted for improvement, and this was identified through the review. So although we do promote the program through a wide variety of channels, many of the participants who responded to our survey felt that it could be more effectively promoted. Most of the participants reported initially hearing of the program through their contractors or through local conservation authority staff. In addition, some challenges were identified with establishing and maintaining the program committee. So these can be attributed to several factors, such as just general difficulties in recruiting members from local agricultural organizations. A lack of engagement or constructive feedback has been observed when we're only holding our meetings on an annual basis. And pandemic-related restrictions on in-person gatherings were in place in the early period when we were launching this committee, so that had an impact as well. And one last thing to point out from the overall review findings is that the program budget is currently carrying a surplus of over $100,000 into the 2026 year. These funds were not allocated towards projects or program delivery. So this lower uptake can also be attributed to some of the limited promotion that took place, as well as contractor availability and supply chain impacts that we experienced during the COVID-19 pandemic. As well, we've seen cost increases sort of across the board for some of the project types, and overall budget pressures on household finances can be a limiting factor for some participants to submit an application. So these surplus funds remain available for new grants in 2026. And we are also setting aside some to provide support for the Living Snow Fence pilot, which was introduced in 2024 as a pilot program. Next slide, please. So moving on to the recommendations that came out of the review, these recommendations are based on input that was received from interest holders through the interviews and surveys, as well as the review of similar programs. And I just want to highlight some of the key recommendations. These ones that I'll mention all currently align with the current program goals. The first suite of recommendations includes minor modifications to the guidelines for 9 existing project types. So this would include things like minor updates to eligibility criteria to ensure that projects are having the maximum water quality benefits. We've also recommended some modest increases in the maximum grant amounts and rates for a few of the project types to encourage uptake and to also recognize some of those increasing project costs. A second key recommendation is the introduction. We're recommending introducing living snow fencing as a new eligible project type under this program and building on lessons learned from the pilot phase. We're also proposing several recommendations that would enhance the effectiveness and efficiency of the program's administration, such as updating the funding prerequisites that are related to environmental farm plans, as well as increasing the 5-year funding limit per property from its current value of $25,000 to a maximum of $35,000. And this would offer a bit more flexibility to landowners who are interested in wishing to undertake multiple projects. In terms of promotion, we would like to increase our targeted promotion and outreach to encourage uptake on some of the less popular project types. We want to explore some new ways of engaging with landowners, maybe look at some larger signs to attract more attention, as well as make better use of targeted advertising through social media platforms. And another idea that came across was the idea of hosting local forums or farm tours to showcase some of the past projects and past farm locations to landowners. The program committee was something we had also heard about having challenges with. We are proposing that we replace the formal program committee structure, the governance structure, with a more informal, flexible approach to soliciting feedback on program design and delivery. So there are lots of committee members and other committees that we can approach for input as needed, and we think that that would be more effective. The last recommendation here is that we continue to fund the program at the $200,000 per year through the special levy for the next 5-year period. And move to the next slide, please. All right, so the recommendations outlined on this slide are reflective of the feedback that we received from interest holders on the opportunities that exist to expand the program beyond its traditional water quality project focus and to broaden out and include more environmental stewardship focus and climate change adaptation and resilience. So this could include supporting private landowners with the creation and restoration of natural habitats, and some landowners have expressed a desire to undertake these types of projects. There are also opportunities to provide support for climate preparedness in rural Ottawa. So at this time, staff are recommending that we would undertake a more comprehensive study to ensure that proposed new project types would represent best management practices and would also make positive contributions towards environmental sustainability and climate preparedness in rural Ottawa. This study would include consultations with internal and external interest holders, including our residents. It would also examine options for integrating with other city programs and for aligning with council-approved strategies, such as Climate Ready Ottawa and the Infrastructure Master Plan. So there are some general project categories that were suggested during the review, and we would give these further consideration. This includes things like habitat improvements related to pollinator strips, grasslands, meadow creation, as well as a variety of ideas to support climate preparedness, such as nature-based solutions to reduce stormwater runoff, agricultural adaptations, and extreme weather preparedness. Staff are proposing to report back to committee and council in 2027 with the findings from this study and the consultations, along with a suite of options and recommendations. These recommendations may include potential program enhancements and associated funding considerations. Next slide, please. So that concludes my presentation. Thanks very much for the opportunity to share this information on the program today, and we would welcome any questions on the program or on the proposed recommendations.
Thank you very much for the presentation. We do have one registered delegate, so we'll go to that delegate and then we can move to questions to staff. So I will ask James Scott Maclock to make your way down to the table. Thank you very much for coming today, James. You will have 5 minutes and I will give you a 1-minute warning.
There we go. Smart precision farming in relation to Ottawa's rural clean water program. Slide 2, please. Meet Tet Yeep, Associate Professor at U of O. Tet is passionate about precision agriculture and smart farming. Slide 3. Area X, home of the Ottawa Smart Farm, collaboration to accelerate agri-tech innovation, adoption, and impact. Slide 4. Area X turns the Ottawa Smart Farm into an agri-tech innovation playground established by Invest Ottawa and the City of Ottawa. Slide 5. Area X brings together autonomous systems, sensors, IoT tech, telecommunications, big data, robotics, drones, CFVs, and 100 acres of farmland. The largest secure test facility in Canada, completely fenced and gated, equipped with GPS, Wi-Fi, 5G, MM waves for telecommunications, and more. Slide 6. Smart farming is a practice involving systems of interconnected sensors, including ground sampling sensors, optical cameras, and more. Remote sensing is done to assess soil properties and crop health. Slide 7. Meet Jordan Wallace, founder of Farmer in Residence at the Ottawa Smart Farm and owner of GPS Ontario. Slide 8.
Sorry to interrupt you, James. Just give me 1 second. I just wanted to make sure that we're focused on the file that is before us and that staff had just presented on. So we are here to talk about the Ottawa Rural Clean Water Program and the updates to that. Could you perhaps keep your delegation focused on that for now?
My delegation is regarding the precision farming, which is mentioned in the Ottawa Clean Program, your links about 30 times. Thank you.
If you could just get to the point.
My whole point is on smart farming. Can we go along? Can you
just
put
make
me
sure
back
to
on
keep it
clock?
focused on the
my
file.
whole thing is focused on that. Thank you very much. Where are we? GPS Ontario, where all data is played on a simple dashboard to precisely gather and monitor and evaluate yield. Slide 9. Meet Francois Collier, member of the IEC and ISO and SEC. He's responsible for international standards surrounding IoT and digital twins. Slide 10. According to Francois, these standards involve the IOC Smart Farming Initiative. Slide 11. Overlap with smart farming. I'd like to point out genomics, breeding, crop production, and biotech engineering, remote sensing and analysis. Slide 12. Who needs standardization? Third dot down, remote sensing, acquisition of data, integration of enormous data sets leading to the sharing for optimization of precision agriculture. Slide 13. Who might have relevant standards? These include technical committees on biotech, molecular biomarkers for food and agriculture, smart farming initiatives, and agriculture, electronics, and more. Slide 14, pertinent SDOs include technical committees on environmental management, biodiversity, circular economy, committees on smart cities, and soil quality. Slide 15, Bioengineering contributions include optimization of resource usage,
This has nothing to do with
precision
water.
agriculture,
Can
SEG
you
12,
please
working
focus your
group 5.
delegation on the file that we are discussing, which is
You're-
the Ottawa Clean Water Program. I know that you've mentioned that this precision farming is mentioned in the report. but-
over 30 times
Okay,
in
that's
several
great.
reports.
I don't think
why
I've
don't you,
heard
why
you
don't
use
you
the
want to
word
talk about
water
precision
once.
farming?
Please focus your delegation on what we are here to discuss.
We're here to discuss precision farming, which is in your clean water management program. Thank you. Slide 15, bioengineering
1 minute.
contribution includes optimization of resource usage. Slide 16, precision agriculture uses data acquisition of weather, soil, pest, and disease and weed information. Slide 17, this is from the NRC's capabilities in food. Key technologies for the
seconds.
future in food include advanced materials, bio-based nano automation and robotics, crop biotech, IoT, big data analytics, and more. Slide 18. I'd like to point out under crop productivity, seed development, controlled environment, plant growth facilities, also under water and land, agriculture inputs, soil, and water diagnosis, remediation, analysis of fresh water, soil analysis, soil composition.
That is your time, James. Thank you very much for your delegation.
Thank you for cutting me off several
There,
times
is
while
there-
refusing
is there
to
any
discuss
questions?
precision.
Any questions for the delegate? Nope. Have yourself a great day, James. Moving on, are there any questions for staff? Okay, Councillor Brown.
Thank you very much. In the presentation, you'd referenced trying to advertise some of the lesser known aspects of the program. Do we have a plan as to how we can share the word and really get it out there so we can drive some of that interest?
Yes, thank you very much for the counselor, or for the question, and sorry, and to the chair. Yes, we have several recommendations to enhance the promotion and communications for the program. Some of the ones that we'd like to try is working more closely with our community partners as well, and working more closely with some of the contractors that offer some of these different project types, or, so for something like controlled tile drainage, perhaps that's something we could work with tile drain contractors on and spread the word that way, because we have seen lots of positive uptake as well when contractors are aware of the projects, they can direct their clients towards us for funding. We would also like to improve how we reach out to landowners, perhaps in a way that's a little more organic. So if we have some tours available or develop some forums where farmers and landowners can learn from each other, learn from their neighbors, see some of the projects on the ground, we think that could drive some interest as well. And one last thing I'll mention is just advertising in general. We do quite a bit of advertising already, and all the program participants receive a small sign that they can put on their laneway, but those may not be getting the visibility that might be necessary. So we were thinking of refocusing some of our existing budget and perhaps buying larger signs to put in an area that might be more visible, for example, or ideas like that, making better use of targeted social media, targeting in on geographic locations and that type of thing. So we have some options to explore for sure.
All right, thank you very much. Yeah, I think there's a great opportunity to leverage likely our partners at the Ottawa Federation of Agriculture, the OFA. They have the network already established, so I think there's a benefit to working with them. The other thing perhaps might be helpful is if staff can provide a crisp write-up that we could include in our weekly newsletters, because there are some folks in the community that hopefully read those, and it might be a great way to get that out there, and wouldn't cost any extra if we help share that material. So just a few suggestions, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brown. Councillor Luloff.
Yeah, I really like the idea of reaching out directly to the contractors that are performing this work on farms. I think that's great. There's nothing like hiring somebody and them saying, "Hey, by the way, did you know that you can get a portion of this cost covered by a program being run by the city?" I think that's a very good way to get that information out. I'd also suggest, on top of the Ontario Federation of Agriculture, perhaps the Ontario Farmer magazine, Farmtario, the magazine of Grain Farmers of Ontario as well. A small ad in there may make a big difference, especially if it's off season, when farmers are paying a little bit more attention to those sorts of publications. But good work. Let's continue to ensure that our farmers are aware of these programs. Like your ideas so far, and I think that while we do have a little bit of work to do, that this program has a lot of potential for far more uptake. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Loloff. Are there any more questions for staff? Councillor Skalski.
Hi, thank you for this review. I think it's great also. I just wanted to also throw in some suggestions. So one, I think that at rural fairs and agricultural fairs are opportunities for really visible, like a tent or a pop-up or a way that you can bring attention to a lot of city programs that are offered for the rural community. So I'll just throw that out there as another way and getting in front of a lot of people. And I also wanted to say that I think it's important that as a city, we also know where the areas are that you think need work and need attention. So one example would be like where you already know there's erosion problems, like, to proactively reach out to the community association in that area, for example, and suggest, hey, there's a problem here, and there's money available to help fix it. Because grants like this are great, but they rely on either communities or individuals to carry that lift. And so, the extent to which we can relieve that lift for people, and even just bring the attention to them that there's something there worth addressing would provide a lot of value for folks. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Skalski. Thank you very much for a very thorough report and presentation today. I certainly appreciate it. So seeing no more questions for staff, I will read in the recommendation. So the report recommends that the Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee receive the Ottawa Clean Water Program 2021 to 2025 review and renewal document 1, approve the 2026 to 2030 Ottawa Rural Clean Water Program as outlined in this report and described in document 1. Number 3, direct staff to undertake further study and consultation on expanding the scope of the Ottawa Rural Clean Water Program as outlined in this report and as described in document 1, and report back to council in 2027. Is this report carried?
Carried.
Much. Okay, moving on to item 6.1, the Rural Community Building Grant Program Grant Application Review. There is no presentation. We have no requests to speak and have received no written correspondence for this item. Does anyone wish to speak on this item? Okay, thank you very much. The report recommends that the Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee approve the recommendations in the Rural Community Building Grants Program applications as detailed in document 1. Is this item carried?
Carried.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to item 6.2, Urban Design Review Panel, Procedural and Reporting Updates. There is no presentation. We have no request to speak and have received no written correspondence for this item. Does anyone wish to speak on this item? This item was considered yesterday by the Planning and Housing Committee, and following a brief discussion was carried as presented. And the report recommendations are as follows: that the Planning and Housing Committee and Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend council direct staff to request the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing to amend the official plan amendment 47 to remove the Urban Design Review Panel report from the list of possible requirements for an application to be deemed complete. And number 2, exclude the Urban Design Review Panel report from the Development Applications, Studies and Plans bylaw. Is this item carried?
Carried.
Thank you very much. Infrastructure and Water Services Department, item 7.1, Municipal Responsibility Agreement for 1491 Manatic Station Road. There is no presentation. We have no request to speak and received no written correspondence for this item. Do any of the members of the committee wish to speak on this item? Okay, the recommendation reads, the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee and the Environment and Climate Change Committee recommend council authorize the city to enter into a municipal responsibility agreement for 1491 Manatic Station Road, delegate authority to the General Manager of Infrastructure and Water Services Department in consultation with the city's finance and legal services to execute municipal responsibility agreements outside of the development review process, including the establishment of any required financial assurances in accordance with provincial requirements. Is this item carried?
Carried.
Thank you. This item will also be considered at the Environment and Climate Change Committee on April 21st. Flying through this, item 9.1, Office of the City Clerk, Status Update, Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee Inquiries and Motions for the period ending March 24th, 2026. We have no presentation. We have received no request to speak and have received no written submission. The report recommendations are that the Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee receive this report for information. Is this item received?
Received.
Thank you. We have no in-camera items. Item number 10.1, information previously distributed, urban design, brief terms of reference and urban design guidelines update. We have received that. So are we going to open mic now, or are we going to? Yeah. Okay. Open mic. Okay, so we will move on to item number 11, open mic session. We do have 3 registered speakers for the open mic session. And where will we begin? I think we are starting with Bobby Vasily, founder and CEO of the Canadian, Wollastonite. I learned a new word today. All right, so we will turn it over to Bob. Bob, it appears that you are on mute. If you could just unmute yourself and we'd be happy to hear your presentation.
I appreciate that. There's sorry about that. I'm having some technical issues. We'll start with a quick video that was put together by the City of Kingston, which will introduce our mine site and the Undo Climate project that we're going to speak about.
Thank you.
We all know that climate change is having a dramatic impact on the planet and on our way of lives. We're going to need to remove somewhere around 5 to 10 billion tons of CO2 from our atmosphere every year.
Kingston is a community that's passionate about sustainability. We were the first city in Ontario to declare a climate emergency.
Wollastonite is a calcium silicate mineral. It's an ideal mineral for enhanced rock weathering. It reacts with CO2 that's in the rainwater, and it sequesters that into carbonates which get put into the soil permanently. Undo developed some wonderful technology to measure, record, and verify the actual carbon that's been put into the ground.
The new partnership with Canadian Wollastonite and Undo, it builds on Kingston's values of being sustainable.
The City of Kingston has a goal to become a carbon neutral city by 2040. We need projects like Canadian Wollastonite and Undo to achieve our goals.
In 2024, we'll put 50,000 tons of wollastonite in agricultural lands.
Rural Ontario plays such a large role on the overall economy and in the world. This relationship with Wollastonite and Undo is truly an example of what partnerships are about that will be successful. It will be an incredible win for everyone.
We're actually going to be a net environmental gain. We're going to contribute more to the environment than we're taking away.
From the minute you drive through the gates and you see the Inukshuk and you see the wetlands and you see the natural landscape that welcomes nature and birding.
Canada is very rich in agricultural land and in minerals. The potential for Canada to be removing hundreds of millions of tons per year is very real. We're building out a scalable, permanent removal system that will take some of that CO2 back out of the atmosphere to help us keep a stable planet for future generations.
Kingston's very proud to be home to Undo, and we're pleased to work with them every step of the way.
Welcome to Kingston.
Welcome to Kingston.
Welcome to Kingston.
Welcome, Undo.
Welcome, Undo.
thank the committee's patience for all of the Kingston promotion in that. The city of Kingston put that video together to welcome this carbon project between Canadian Wollastonite and Undo. We're very much looking to expand this project into a much larger region, which is the Ottawa region, which is strategically, it has large strategic advantages both globally, well, I should say nationally and globally. Peggy Sue will describe a bit more about that and about the program. I'll just finish off by speaking a little bit about Canadian Wollastonite as a company. We're here in Eastern Ontario. We're the only wollastonite mining operation in Canada. We have just a little over 600 acres of land, of which 55 acres is being mined for the production of wollastonite. The remaining acreage is enhanced. We've put in forests, wetlands. The net result of this, and the other major carbon undertaking as a mining operation, is this quarter will be fully electrified by the end of June. So we will be able to produce 150,000 tons of wollastonite material per year, carbon negative, actually carbon negative in addition to the forests and the wetlands that we put in. We support Eastern Ontario contractors. We outsource our mining, extraction, and processing to a major Eastern Ontario contractor, George Tackerberry Construction, who has a fair bit of operations in the Ottawa region. And if the Ottawa region grows as we expect it will, and Peggy Sue will talk about Undo's plans, Canadian Wollastonite will also invest several $1 million in electrification of trucking and allow us to set up some depots where we could bring the material into the Ottawa region. Again,
sorry to interrupt you, Bob. Your time is up, but I did neglect to give you a 30-second warning. So if you want to take 30 seconds just to wrap up, and then we'll go to questions. Thank you.
No, I'd like to save the time for Peggy Sue, who will follow me on this. Thank you very much.
But you do have, looks like you have a question from Councillor Brown.
Thank you very much, Chair. And Bob, with all the welcome to Kingston, I think I should say welcome to Ottawa. Peggy Sue gets her 5 minutes too, so I'll save some questions for Peggy Sue. But could you explain the partnership that you've created with the City of Kingston? Because I think, sitting on this side of the table in Ottawa, I think there's a success story there that you're looking to replicate here in Ottawa. And seeing some of our colleagues on Kingston City Council who are so open in their support of what you're doing, I think there's a good message there. So maybe you can go into a little bit of detail for us.
Super, and I appreciate the question. The City of Kingston, the program, I'll start off with the program. Undo, and through the sale of carbon credits, is sponsoring agriculture farms to put wollastonite into their operations. The City of Kingston, the only cost to farmers generally is just the cost of transport between the mine site and the farm operation. The partnership with the City of Kingston is absorbing half of that cost and rebating that to the farmers. In 2026, Undo is going one step further, and Peggy Sue will explain that. Undo is also covering the other half. So essentially with the City of Kingston, their farm constituents will be able to purchase and have spread wollastonite at no cost to the program. I think the city was quite pleased with the initial results. The take-up has been strong, and as dollar for dollar for the city investing in carbon offsets or carbon removal or carbon initiatives, I would say the city will I think confirm this is by far the lowest cost durable carbon removal opportunity that the city has of any of the programs that they've undertaken in terms of dollars per ton. So we're looking to expand this. We're certainly looking for a major site, and the region of Ottawa fits that criteria perfectly.
No, thank you very much. And just my last question for you. How many producers in the Kingston area were you able to partner with?
So in terms of farms, I don't know, I don't know the number of that. Peggy Sue may be able to comment on that directly.
And thanks so much, Bob.
Thank you very much for your very interesting presentation, Bob. Seeing no more questions for you, we will turn it over to Peggy Sue, who I see has joined us as well. Thank you. Great to meet you. And we'll turn it over to you for your 5-minute delegation.
All right. Thank you so much, Clark. And thank you so much, councilors, for your time this morning. Bob, thank you for that wonderful setting of the table. Yes, we are pretty excited to have this conversation with the City of Ottawa, which represents about 250,000 acres of farmland. And that is a massive opportunity that we're looking to expand into in a way that supports this city's initiatives. So let's get into some of that. So yes, Undo is a permanent carbon removal company, and we utilize enhanced rock weathering technology, namely wollastonite, which we procure from Canadian wollastonite. Our operations are based in Ontario. We have about a 20-person team right now, currently based in Kingston. And I'm coming to you today as the general manager for Undo Carbon Canada. Next slide, please. Okay. So for those less familiar with what enhanced rock weathering technology is, and for those of you where wollastonite is the first time you're hearing about this today, yes, our technology focuses on enhancing and accelerating a very natural process that is already happening, but we are looking to speed it up significantly by taking this mineral, this silicate rock, wollastonite, crushing it up even finer and spreading it across farmlands at variable rates based on a number of soil analyses that we perform on a farm-by-farm basis. This is an incredibly durable form of carbon sequestration. We often ask, well, why not plant more trees? Well, we certainly have to plant more trees, there's no doubt. And we need more durable forms of carbon sequestration. And this is certainly, as Bob was saying, dollar for dollar, the most cost-effective and one of the more permanent forms that currently exists. It's also one of the most bankable on the carbon market, making it a very meaningful business model to bring into the climate solutions space. Next slide, please. I may have gotten a bit ahead of myself, so this will just be a bit of a repeat on what I've said around some of the advantages of enhanced rock weathering, given some of the other technologies that are out there, our BEC systems, yes, afforestation, in comparison to biochar and so on. So there's just a great amount of stability when it comes to the weathering that the silicate rock provides when it does weather atmospherically, take that carbon, sink it into the soil, and then down into our water systems and further down all the way into the oceans, durably locking it away. I'll leave that there. Next slide, please. Okay. Just to give an idea of numbers, to date, in Ontario alone, we've spread just under 80,000 tons. Just under 30,000 acres have been enriched with wollastonite, and we've been able to serve 195 farms with this amendment, locking away just over 17,000 tons of CO2. Next slide, please. Again, just giving an overview of our Kingston specific operations. Yes, just under 10,000 tons of rock has been spread in 2023 to 25. What's exciting about that is that this coming year, we're going to be spreading in the first half of the year, 65,000 tons of rock. And at the end of this year, 165,000 tons of rock. We've worked with 24 farms of variable sizes. Our farm sizes are getting larger. We've locked away just over 3,000 tons of CO2. Next slide, please. These are our spring goals. This is what we're looking at, just over 5,000 for 26, and just about 3,000 acres in our pipeline. We've identified 11 new farms, and we've got some very significant potential already in our spring, which is a challenging time to spread an amendment, as all farmers will know. Next slide, please. These are here for the council's reference. These are some of the testimonies from the farmers we work directly with. It is very much a white glove service. We work directly with our farmers. We ensure that their interests are served, that we are working within their crop cycles. The point of this is to utilize a unique thank you, business model to funnel money from various industries, the tech industry, larger corporations, via the carbon market to then serve Canadian soil health to help regenerative farming practices. And we're pretty proud of that unique business model. If you would please the next slide, and I'll end with this. Okay, so the benefits back to the City of Kingston, yes, dollar for dollar. For every one from the City of Kingston, we have been able to invest about 12.5. And at the close of this rebate program, which was for $200,000 for the past 2 years, we will finish and close out this program 6 months ahead of time, this June, which will have served about 40,000 tons of material and roughly about 10,000 acres of farmland there. So we're quite proud of this, and we would so love to be able to bring this initiative in a way that is most conducive to the city of Ottawa. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much for your delegation. I see a question from you from Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Peggy Sue. So I appreciate seeing how many operators have partnered with you. You've done a good job explaining some of the climate benefits and the science behind it, but could you talk about why a farmer might want to do this? What's the benefit to the crop health and the soil health?
Absolutely, and thank you for asking. I apologize, I ran short on time. So yes, the benefits. So often we get compared to a liming source. It's what's next nearest. It's what is most understood in a farmer's repertoire. We're a little different, but let's start from there because it's interesting. Most farmers are, if they can, they're testing their soils regularly, seasonally, and they're seeing those drops in pH, what sort of additives they need for the season to boost their yields and so on. But most farmers are seeing a pretty high, up and down throughout the season of their pH based on what their crop is doing. And so that's lime. Lime's your quick spike, your quick weathering agent. It does the thing, but it puts you right back down at the end. Wollastonite, however, because it is slower weathering, we act as a buffering agent. We also have a number of macronutrients that come into the soil. And our special sauce really is the components around soil strengthening, regenerative soil practices. So improving drought tolerance, making silicon available to those plants for that uptake. We do all of that testing of plant tissues, of soils, so that we can prove this season after season. Open soil systems are very hard to measure, but we're all over it. So instead of a farmer getting this kind of a variance, we get a much more even keeled, controlled buffering of their pH. And that does have significant impacts to their reduction in additives and in their yield being more protected season after season. Did that answer your question?
It did, thank you. And my second question to you, I noticed one of the testimonials that said this one farmer in Markham has been spreading wollastonite for 8 years. So do you find that you've got some staying power with the farmers you've been able to partner with? Like they keep coming back year after year?
So that's part of the learning curve for us is we are not a year after year amendment. We are right now looking at the 3 to 5 year application rotation, which is a little different for a farmer. So we have farmers who will have us spread an amount of their fields first, and then the next set of fields, and then the next set of fields. And so that rotation. But we actually, that's next on our piece is seeing if we can speed up that application cycle because our farmers, the staying power and the word of mouth of this community is very strong. And we're finding that farmers want to have this amendment more frequently and applied at higher densities because it is a lower, slower weathering and it is a great buffering agent.
Well, thank you very much for your delegation today. I was able to speak with Rebecca Aird, who's a resident here in the city of Ottawa, and she's a great proponent of the science and the benefits that it could bring. So appreciate you and Bob taking the time delegating today. Thank you.
Thank you, David Brown. I appreciate that.
Thank you for your questions, Councillor Brown. Thank you very much for your delegation, Peggy Sue, and for your time here today. And since Councillor Brown did just mention Rebecca Aird, I will take the opportunity to mention that we have received correspondence from her, which has been circulated to the members of the committee and is on the SharePoint for anyone who wishes to see it. We will now move to our final open mic delegate. She's no stranger to the committee, Shirley Dolan. Welcome.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to start off by thanking you very much for this opportunity. It's a pleasure to be back speaking to you again. And today my topic is the Alto High-Speed Rail project and its impact on the City of Ottawa, its residents and businesses. As you know, no doubt know, it's a $60 to $90 billion project spanning decades, with the ultimate goal of reducing travel time between Toronto and Quebec City corridor. You mentioned the Ontario Federation of Agriculture earlier, and they have asked for a pause that urges the government to immediately halt the proposed project to allow for a thorough economic, social, and environmental impact assessment, and also a meaningful consultation with affected agriculture, forestry, and community, rural communities. So many rural communities so far have published official statements expressing their concerns and opposition to the project. I'd like the City of Ottawa to do something similar. So that's my ask for today. One of the municipalities that has expressed concerns very, very nicely is Krista Lowry, who is the mayor of Mississippi Mills. She has written a letter to MP Scott Reed, which I would like to share with you. And I think it's appropriate because they're a very rural municipality. And a lot of the things that she says, I think should ring true here. So let me just bring up. So number one, she talks about transportation and municipal services perspective. What I'm talking about here is things that could add to the City of Ottawa's budget. So for example, she talks about the potential severance of local and county roads, a fully fenced, grade-separated, high-speed rail corridor risks creating dead-end or orphaned road segments and could result in longer travel times for fire, ambulance, police services. There's an impact on school buses, snow clearing, waste collection, and the increased ongoing operational costs for the municipality. I think we would have the same issues. Number two is the impacts on agriculture and rural use land. So Mississippi Mills has a strong agricultural base, as do we, and they have deliberately strengthened protections for prime agricultural land through their official plan, as have we. When I say we, I mean the City of Ottawa. Bisecting active, I'm going to move this down a bit. Bisecting active farmland, particularly without appropriate grade separations, can significantly disrupt farming operations by restricting access, dividing fields, creating orphan parcels, and interfering with drainage systems. These impacts threaten not only individual operations, but also the long-term viability of agriculture as an economic and cultural cornerstone. She talks also about sensitive watershed systems, wetlands, and natural heritage features. Earlier on, we had a presentation about the Rural Clean Water Program. I wonder if this program has considered the impact of the high-speed rail on that program, because I think it could be significant. Drainage and water management impacts are particularly significant in rural settings, where changes to surface and subsurface water flows can affect farmland, municipal drains, private wells, and downstream ecosystems. The long-term costs of migrating these impacts often fall on municipalities. I think I want to skip to this one here. Fiscal responsibility.
Yeah, that is time, Shirley. If you could just take 30 seconds to wrap up and then we can move into questions.
Okay, I think my point is that, and I may send you this because there's a lot that I didn't get to. It's going to have an impact on the city of Ottawa, and not only rural, but urban as well. And I could come back and talk about that another time, but I'd really encourage you to ask Alto to put a pause, the federal government to put a pause, because I really do think there's a big impact there.
So you have a question from Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Shirley. Mayor Lowry's a great communicator for her constituency, and I know she works closely with Chair Kelly. If she's been able to reach out to her federal representatives, are you aware of any advocacy efforts with some of the federal members of parliament in the city of Ottawa?
What I just read you was a letter addressed to MP Scott Reid. So I don't know if there's been any response, but as you probably know, MP Scott Reid has a petition, which is, I think, a little over 10,000 right now, which outlines concerns, many of the same ones that Mayor Lowry has expressed.
No, thank
I
you.
don't know of any other MPs that she's reached out. I personally have reached out to my MP, Bruce Fanjoy. We had a nice meeting. I don't think he's ready to alto, but we did have, his belief is that we can have high speed and we can also work on improving the Via Rail system. I'm not so sure that that would happen, but he thinks that can happen.
Perfect. No, thanks so much, Shirley.
My pleasure.
Well, politicians do tend to be optimists, I will say that. And before you go, Shirley, I just want to, I know that you ran out of time, so I'll just ask if there's one point that you weren't able to get out that you wanted to get out, and we'll give you a minute to do that.
Okay, I'd maybe like to mention the new expropriation laws, which is part of C Bill 15, which I believe I don't know if it's got royal assent yet, but it will soon if it hasn't. I attended an online presentation by a legal group in Toronto, Davies Howe. They're experts in expropriation law, and they gave quite a good presentation on what the new impacts are. And I would encourage you to reach out to a firm that specializes in expropriation law to learn about what's happening. There's 4 major changes. I'll just mention one, which I think is the most egregious, and that is the new federal right to first refusal. And what that means, if the federal government comes and knocks on your door, they can say, we have the right to first refusal. So if you want to sell this property, come to us first. That essentially locks up your property for, I believe, up to 8 years. So you can imagine what that would do to a farmer or a business or anyone trying to sell their land. One of the aspects of putting that on your title is that you cannot do any improvements to your property. So if you were hoping to improve your property to make it more attractive to a buyer, that's off the table. So I'll just mention that one. There are others as well too, but I think that's the most egregious of the 4 changes. Thank you.
Thank you again for your delegation, Shirley, and I'm glad you mentioned Krista Lowry. As Councillor Brown said, we do have the opportunity, and I have over the last 3 or 4 years to work with her at least on an annual basis at the Rural Ontario Municipal Association Conference. And she is actually the zone rep for our area at Roma. So definitely a good person to have in your corner when it comes to these sorts of things. And so I do believe that I'll be making contact with Krista and starting a conversation between her and I or the rest of the committee as well if they are interested. But I know this is a topic of great importance in rural, not just rural Ottawa, but across the region. And all the areas that could potentially be affected. So I knew at some point we'd be hearing about this, and I'm sure that we will be having a conversation as a group in terms of how we can respond and what we will be responding with. So to be continued. Thank you very much, Shirley.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes our open mic session part of ARAC, and we will move on to item 12, which is motions of which notice has been previously given. The first item is 12.1, motion Councillor Brown, review of rural transit area A funding model and feasibility of private mass transportation partnerships. And I am aware that there is some amendments to the motion, so I will ask Councillor Brown at this point to read in the amended motion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate your collaboration on this and the collaboration from Councillor Skalski. And I believe the revised motion will ensure that we touch on all the different concerns across rural Ottawa. Whereas demand for expanded mass transit options in rural Ottawa has increased as rural communities continue to grow and more residents commute to employment, education, healthcare, and essential services. And whereas the city's rural transit funding framework, including the rural transit area A and B funding models, is intended to allocate costs across the rural wards in a fair, transparent, and evidence-based manner, including consideration of service levels, usage, geographic equity, and ability to pay. And whereas there is a need to assess whether the current rural transit area A and B funding models accurately reflect actual service levels and benefit received, ridership demand, and ensures comparable treatment across rural wards and villages. Whereas private mass transportation companies already operate in the region and surrounding municipalities and should be evaluated for their potential to supplement service for rural commuters and improve connectivity between villages and major hubs. And whereas any supplemental service should be assessed for integration with the city's transit network and standards, including accessibility, safety, reliability, customer experience, and fare and transfer interoperability where feasible. Therefore, be it resolved that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend Council direct city staff to review the rural transit area A and B funding models and report back to the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee, including a description of how the model allocates services and costs among rural areas and wards, and with the inputs driving those allocations. B, options within each ward to improve alignment between ratepayers and bus service receivers, ensuring fairness and transparency. C, potential adjustments to address any misalignment with estimated impacts by rural ward or village and any budget implications. Be it further resolved that city staff be directed to evaluate the feasibility of working with private mass transportation providers to supplement rural transit service for commuters and to enhance connectivity between villages and major mobility hubs, for example, parks, park and ride lots, town centers, rapid transit stations, and key employment areas, including A, procurement and contracting opportunities, including whether existing city contracts may be leveraged or expanded, with estimated costs, risks, and timelines subject to the city's procurement bylaw. B, minimum service standards and requirements, including accessibility, AODA, safety, reliability, customer service, data sharing, performance metrics, monitoring and reporting mechanisms to ensure accountability. C, integration considerations with OC Transpo and the broader network, routing coordination, schedules, branding, wayfinding, and feasibility of fare and transfer integration, including Presto where applicable, and implications for OC Transpo operations, governance, and labor considerations. D, opportunities for a time-limited pilot project in one or more rural corridors or villages, including recommended locations, expected outcomes, evaluation framework, and proposed funding sources, including clear success criteria and decision points for scaling, modifying, or discontinuing the pilot. Be it further resolved that staff incorporate the work already underway in response to Councillor Brown's amending motion number 2025-62-10 from the July 23rd, 2025 City Council meeting into the work and report required by this motion, and that a single consolidated report be brought forward to avoid duplication, satisfying the reporting requirements of both motions. And be it further resolved that staff report include a recommended phased path forward where feasible, an implementation plan identifying decisions required, budget impacts, including both operating and capital, and a proposed timeline for any pilot or pilots and/or to implement proposed adjustments to the rural transit area A and B funding models. And be it further resolved that staff report back when practical. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brown. It was a long one. So there are 2 registered speakers. We will go first to Jerry Pearson.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. I didn't do a presentation this time. I just figured I'd take the time to go over kind of what I've learned over the past couple of years since 2024. Was speaking with probably a couple hundred residents as well as some of the businesses. Recently, I do have a friend that does live in one of your wards. She actually just got laid off from work. And unless she can find a job really quick, she's not going to have a vehicle to drive anymore. So at that point in time, there's either going to have to rely on friends or somehow go on to the social assistance. So what I would recommend in my eyes, not just because I'm a private company that would like to do this service, but because of the residents alone, there is a high need for this. Just in her instance, if she doesn't find a job soon, she's going to be stuck and be looking at moving back into Ottawa, where prices are pretty high for rent. Another instance was when the school board changed some of the borders. There was parents that had to contact us because their kids can no longer take school buses. Now being the transportation for the students, you're looking at roughly about $5,800 to $6,000 a year just per one child to be transported. So a lot of parents, especially gas prices, food prices and that, they can't afford that. So then what do? They're now stuck with, how am I going to get my kid to work if they can't get the bus and now I have to be late for work and run the chance of losing their job. I can go on with instances like that. From Ward 1 right through to Ward 5, speaking with people. So I won't take up the whole time. I just wanted to speak with those instances where this is something that needs to be done and not possibly done. It does need to be done, and sooner than later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jerry. We'll go to Councillor Skalski for a question.
Thanks for coming, Jerry. Can you please clarify? I believe I'd seen you at a delegation in the past, but can you just provide some context into like what you're proposing and the type of service that you imagine would be would serve what residents are telling you?
Okay, so what I'm proposing is an actual full-on, not just an AM PM service, an actual full-on local service, where the buses don't go just in the morning or just in the afternoon. It's going to be continuous. So people don't have to worry about what time do I have to go in at 5 in the morning to catch my 10 o'clock doctor's appointment or whatnot. So there would be fixed route. My vision is there's fixed routes with on-demand service. So people like that aren't close to where the stops are, they would be able to use an application that we've been working on to say, okay, I need to be picked up at this location along the fixed route. The bus would stop within that area to pick the person up and take them. And then going home, you have the ability to say, okay, can you just drop me off here? It's kind of almost like just a regular shuttle service type thing, but within along like a fixed route. And depending on how many buses and the locations, you're looking at anywhere from half an hour to maybe an hour between buses. No problem.
Councillor Brown?
Thank you, Chair. And Jerry, thanks for coming out again.
No problem.
Part of our unique geography being so large is that what might work great in the rural east end might not work good in the rural southwest end in my area. Something that we hear often from members of this committee throughout this entire term of council has been how one size doesn't fit all. And I still believe that to be true even when we're talking about each of the rural wards, that we each have distinct requirements and needs. And some areas are experiencing a tremendous amount of growth like mine. Some haven't seen a lot of growth in the last few decades. One thing that I find very positive is that there are smaller municipalities that ring the city of Ottawa that are looking into some of these small niche services to provide the type of service that their residents need. So can you talk a little bit about what you're seeing in your industry with some of these smaller municipalities and why you think it might benefit some of the rural villages in the city of Ottawa?
Certainly, just with like North Grenville alone, coming into Ottawa to, I believe they come into Limebank, but they also service Kemptville. Just within the last year, they've grown just due to the fact that, again, the pricing of gas. So people are now able to take that service into Ottawa instead of having to drive them, pay parking and whatnot. So with them, they have grown. I think they've just added another bus and looking into adding another one within the next, I believe it's 6 months. So something like that, just having a service within the rural wards. Yes, one size doesn't fit all. And that's where the flexibility of a private company is able to, okay, well, Ward 1 needs maybe 2 buses, but then Ward 5 needs 6, Ward 21 needs 4 type thing. We can definitely work within those. And then service basically brings everybody into, say, Limebank, Trim Road. And it would basically help bring people into even OC Transpo and alleviate traffic.
Yeah, and I think that's one component of this that I don't want to be lost. Ultimately the goal is to get as many people from where they are to where they need to go and get as many cars off the road. And flexibility is something that any large organization struggles with. So the city of Ottawa does struggle with providing the exact same service on Wellington Street as it might be able to provide on a main street in the village. And I don't think that's a realistic expectation, which is why, again, the theme of one size doesn't fit all is something that resonates not only with rural residents, but with members of this committee. My last question for you. When I speak with my counterparts, Reeves and mayors of some of these smaller townships, they're eager to look at something that's a little bit more regional because it provides that surety for their constituencies that this service might be able to continue to exist in the future beyond a pilot. But for that, they need a larger ridership base. And I think rural Ottawa may provide that, recognizing that the vast majority of rural Ottawa has no daily OC Transpo service. So are you hearing something similar with the conversations you're having with some of these other municipalities?
Actually, just a few weeks ago, I did present for Clarence Rockland, kind of like the same service to add Ward 1 to it. They are looking into having some sort of service because I did do a survey for that area, Ward 1 as well as Rockland, and I got close to 1,000 signatures where people were either for the service, very few were, no, we don't want the service. And then the majority were, they wanted to use it for work as well as recreation, like personal stuff like shopping, going to visit friends, especially with students, the younger generation. They can't afford their own car. Mommy and daddy aren't willing to buy them that. But because there's no type of transportation, they're now stuck with mom and dad having to drive them to go see the friends on the weekend or the evenings or even like after school sports. I did also, last summer, I also spoke with the mayor for Smith Falls. He was interested, but again, it all came down to funding. to have a service bring from Smith Falls into Carleton Place and then in reality into Ottawa. Those are the two that did reach back out to me that I have spoken with. And it just seems within around Ottawa, Smith Falls, Carleton Place, even Perth, there's a need to bring people into Ottawa. And there just isn't that type of service for most of these places.
No, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate your delegations and the work that you've done over the past few years. And I know you've partnered with some great residents up in Ward 5 who want to see options on the table. And ultimately, the goal of my motion is to get the information on the table so we can have an open and transparent conversation. I appreciate all of the support that you've put towards it and all of the time that you've invested. So thanks so much, Jerry.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brown. Thank you for being here today, Jerry, and for your continued work on this file. You can see that there is a demand in rural Ottawa for this, and you had mentioned several things in your delegation that really resonated with me and the residents I represent. In 2022, when I started going door to door, I didn't realize how important access to transit for my residents was, but it certainly is. And one thing that highlights that is the West Carleton Secondary School gets out at 2:15, and you see, and I've been told this as well, is that the buses that go from West Carleton Secondary School into Canada, because West Carleton does serve parts of Morgan's Grant in the public school system, that those buses are packed after school, and you can't get a seat on that bus anymore. And that is students going from the secondary school in West Carleton into Canada to, shop or see friends, or, a lot of the times it's to get a part-time job because there's not a ton of those in rural areas. I see Roddy Bolivar is here. He's the head of the executive director of the Carpro Corridor BIA, and that is something that they've brought to my attention on a regular basis. And I want to echo Councillor Brown in terms of the difference of rural Ottawa to the rest of the city. Ward 5 is the same size as the entire city of Edmonton. And there's, the population is low and it's not concentrated in particular areas. So delivering that service is a lot different than it would be delivering it in the city. And so I think you heard the one size fits all
doesn't fit all
catchphrase gets used here at the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee a lot. We heard it a lot during the Rural Summit. And so I think what you are coming to the table with resonates very well with rural residents. I know that there is a demand, but my residents don't necessarily want to spend $1,000 a year extra on their tax bill to do that. And not everyone in the ward wants that service. So I think what you bring to the table, it fits what we heard at the Rural Summit, fits what rural Ottawa wants to see, and I appreciate you being here today. Not seeing any further questions for you, so you are relieved, Jerry, and appreciate your time. And we will go to Noah Weinberg next. Thank you very much, Noah. You 5 minutes.
Chair and members of the committee, bonjour. Merci de me donner la parole aujourd'hui. My name is Noah Weinberg, President of ATU Local 279. Je représente les travailleuses et les travailleurs de première ligne de transport en commun de OC Transport. Let me be clear. We support improving rural transit. We support better connections between communities. Nous appuyons les solutions concrètes pour mieux servir les résidents. But this motion does more than that. It introduces private delivery as a path forward before we have fully explored and supported solutions within our own public system. And that matters because transit in this city is not an open market. Under the city's own authority and bylaws, no one can operate a transit service without authorization from the city and the director of transit. So this is not about filling a gap. This is about making a choice to begin shifting public transit work outside of OC Transport. There are real alternatives that have already been explored. The recently resigned associate general manager examined expanding service using our own existing models, using a smaller fleet expanding the fleet, using smaller vehicles, building service within OC Transpo. That approach improves service. It creates jobs, it creates opportunity. Et ça permet aussi de réintégrer les travailleurs en retour progressif vers leurs fonctions complètes. That is how you strengthen public service, not by carving pieces of it out. Because once you move towards private partnerships, you introduce new problems. You create inconsistency in service, you create inequality in access, and you create barriers between services that should be fully integrated. Et ça, on le voit déjà. We see it in our own system. The complexity, the red tape, and the lack of flexibility that comes with a P3 and rail, and more recently in the drop in the snow clearing that got contracted out. That should be a lesson, not a model to expand. Microtransit is not new. We have seen versions of this for decades, and the results are consistent. Higher cost per trip, lower efficiency, and limited ability to scale. A bus becomes more efficient as more people use it. Microtransit becomes more expensive. In many cases, it becomes subsidized taxi service and not a real public service. Ottawa already has a system that serves the residents based on demand. Rural areas already receive service. That service can be expanded within OC Transpo, fully integrated, one network, one standard. If this was about improving service, we would be talking about OC Transpo delivering it. Instead, we are talking about contracting it out. And that has consequences. Loss of control, loss of consistency, et à long terme, une perte de qualité pour les usagers. We are not opposed to solutions, but we are strongly opposed to shortcuts. Si on veut améliorer le transport en milieu rural, faisons-le correctement. Start with public service. Build it with OC Transpo. Engage the people who deliver it. Because privatization is not a solution. It is the beginning of bigger problems. Je vous remercie. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your concise delegation. I will go to Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Noah, thank you for coming out today. This may be the first time that we've seen someone from the ATU rep come and speak to us. So it's good to have that conversation. And I know you and I spoke last year as well, briefly. I think for us on this side of the table, we can't get locked into an either or conversation because Ottawa is just too broad. I did a quick measurement this morning in the urban transit area where riders receive that daily consistent transit service. That geography is smaller than the ward I represent. And that's just me, not including Councillor Skalski, Councillor Luloff, Councillor Kitts, or Chair Kelly. And so when we talk about scaling, I think there's a real conversation to be had there. But I don't know how we scale appropriately across an area that becomes a little more population dispersed the further you move out from the center of the city. And I think that's the circle that we're having a hard time squaring here. When we talk about contracting out, I recognize and respect that the city has made decisions in the past that lock us into a particular path. But nothing prohibits us from having a conversation, both with OC Transpo, its union, its members, and the taxpayers of this city. This is about having that conversation, and for me, getting the facts on the table so we can make an informed decision. A lot has changed in the last 25 years of amalgamation. I think now it's a great time to have this conversation. But so I'm clear, you're not here delegating on behalf of OC Transpo management today. You're here on behalf of your members.
That is correct.
Okay. And I know staff are on the call. I believe Pat Scrimger is going to join us. So I know I'll have some questions for Pat. Would you, I guess, acknowledge from our perspective that Ottawa is maybe just too big to provide the exact same service on every street corner, and that it's okay to be a little bit different depending on where you live in the city?
Nobody is disputing the difference. If I may go back to the first point, you're correct. I am probably the first one to attend from ATU at this particular committee. After our brief conversation where I introduced myself to you at council, I would have hoped that that would have sparked the opportunity to share conversation together going forward. That did not. And we've continued to this point with a motion without ever considering ATU's opinion on the matter. That I have a hard time with. Yes, I'm not speaking on behalf of OC Transpo, I'm speaking on behalf of my members. We acknowledge that there is a difference. We acknowledge that there is a need. But the responsibility to fill that gap is not giving it to a private contractor. That's on OC Transpo, and that's on you as council to direct OC Transpo to expand, to explore those solutions, to collaborate with the people that are involved prior to finding other solutions. That is where we have a difficulty in this conversation.
No, thank you. And I appreciate that. And you know, your job is to speak on behalf of your members. Our job is to speak on behalf of the taxpayers who have to fund the entire service. And to Chair Kelly's point, there are many in the rural area who oppose expanding the boundary because it does come with massive costs, which is why I think a user pay system, if that's something we can examine, might target the service we need in the villages that require it without burdening others. But Mr. Chair, that's all that I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Seeing no other questions, I may take an opportunity to provide some comments and a question myself. So we will go to questions to staff after the delegate. There's a couple of things that I had a hard time wrapping my head around that you said. Of course, I understand your position. You're here to represent the members of the union and what you do. And I don't necessarily see Councillor Brown's motion as trying to cut OC Transpo out of the conversation, but I do believe, and I think that was reflected in my comments earlier, that we are really looking to look at all options that could potentially provide that service, as that is our responsibility as a committee and councillors, is to represent our residents first. And this is a service, or the proposed service would bring people from rural Ottawa to transit hubs within the boundary. So can you comment on, because you seemed to indicate that this is a system that would operate completely outside of OC Transpo, and of course the structures would and the funding would, but it would bring people to park and rides and to major transit hubs that would then use OC Transpo who are not using it right now. So can you comment on that aspect of it? Because the way I see it, it would actually enhance and bring more people into the transit system in the city, which would bring in fares and allow us to enhance service.
Again, it's about the consistency, and it's about being part of collaboration and being a seat at that table. That has not occurred to this point. This motion seeks funding to explore an alternative option when the real options within what is available under the bylaws has not fully been explored. That is where we stand today.
Okay. And I understand your desire to fully explore that. And again, I think we can do both at the same time, explore both options. But I have heard you comment publicly in the past that private is never the solution. Did you mean to say that?
Absolutely. Within the city of Ottawa, our experience with private has gone sideways.
So then what would be the point of the conversation that you are seeking?
The point of the conversation is
private is never the answer. What's the conversation we're even having?
Am I going to be permitted to respond without being interrupted?
I didn't interrupt you.
Privatization is not a solution for public service. When we've done it on the train, and now we're seeing it in the snow clearing, it has not gone properly or well. It gets overridden in funding, and we lose the quality control.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you. Merci.
So we can move into questions for staff, and I am under the impression that Councillor Skalski has questions. You know, no need to raise your hand. We'll go to you.
Sorry about that. I'm having some technical difficulty. Thank you. Okay, so for me, this motion is really about two distinct things. So it's about ensuring the value for money, for tax money, that those who pay for a service receive one, and where they don't, that there's greater transparency about what the taxes are funding in rural areas. And two, it's about exploring ways to complement the services that we already have. So I think it's really important that we're clear. We are intentionally looking at private operators because I have heard loud and clear that having empty city buses in rural Ottawa is not what people want. People are looking for a nimble, on-demand service that are paid for by users, not the tax base writ large. So I think that came out in some of the comments in this exchange, but I just wanted to reiterate that this motion is doing two very distinct things. So we need to get the most for what we pay for, and we owe it to residents to explore ways that needs can be met with complementary services. Residents see success in other rural municipalities with private on-demand minibuses, and I get questions all the time about why we can't have something like that here. That's exactly what I hear. Why can't we have this here? So this motion will give us the information that we need to inform a discussion around that issue. I do have some questions for staff on this. So first, is this motion implementable in the timeline that is presented?
Mr. Chair, I just want to confirm you can hear my audio okay?
Yeah, we can hear.
Okay, thank you. Yes, we can meet it by within the terms of the revised motion.
Okay. Has the City of Ottawa ever explored private supplementary options in the past? And if so, can you just elaborate a bit on what those findings have been?
So first of all, before amalgamation and in the first couple of years after amalgamation, the city contracted, before amalgamation, it was individual municipalities. After amalgamation, the city did contract with companies to provide several transit services. Over the years that followed, the decision of council was either to end those or to bring them into staff operation. In addition to that, quite a number of private companies were running bus services into downtown Ottawa, serving stops along the way within the municipality. But most of those stopped because of low ridership at the beginning of COVID and have not yet resumed.
Okay. So it's been a pretty long time is what it sounds like since we've really explored this. Is that a fair characterization?
Since contracting by the city, yes, it's been, I would say, over 20 years.
Yeah.
But for private companies like the earlier delegate was speaking about operating and carrying people in the city, we were doing that right up until COVID.
Okay. Can you clarify when was the last time that routes like these shopping buses were reviewed?
They're reviewed quarterly.
Quarterly?
Yes.
Oh. And can you just elaborate on whether there is minimum service level expectations built into the transit area A?
Yes, there are, as set out in the decisions taken by council when shortly after amalgamation, when the current system was set up.
Can you just elaborate a bit on what those minimum service level expectations are?
There's two categories of service that were decided on at that time, and one about a few years later. The first was what were called at the time Rural Express, which we now call connection routes that run from the larger villages that are within the rural transit area A, places like Vars, Manotick, Carlsbad Springs, and several others to the central part of the city. Now they run to their nearest O train station, and those have 1 to 3 trips in the morning, 1 to 3 trips, sometimes 4 trips in the afternoon. We also ran at the time some local connector buses that were intended for after school or evening services. Only one of those remains now. The others were dropped at the decision of council. The one that remains is an after-school trip that runs from Richmond to Stittsville and runs every afternoon. And then in a separate decision taken later, council decided to expand what had been a 1-day-a-week shoppers route from North Gore, Cars, and Manotick into the urban part of the city, to expand that to 5 of those from different parts, different villages around the city. So there's a different once a week route for shoppers and people going to appointments on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Each one's different. And then in addition, there's paratranspo service, which is provided across the entire extent of the city.
Is there any standard related to the proximity of the kind of the ratepayer to the nearest stop that's available or anything like that? Or is it actually just a minimum number of buses that would enter the area?
The decision taken by council on funding was subject of much discussion at the time among council members, and then in following multiple rounds of consultation, and then they decided on a geographic extent for the property taxes rather than it being tied to proximity to the bus stops.
Okay. That's good for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Skalski. Councillor Luloff.
Thanks for your answers today, Pat. Could OC Transpo, given its current context and the amount of buses that we have available every day, offer what this private company or a private company could be offering in the rural area for a lower cost or at all with the amount of buses that we currently have available?
It would depend on the decisions of council, I'd say, whether council took a decision as part of any expansion to purchase more buses. And I think as the second part of your question about a trade-off in costs, it would really depend on the costs that a private company would quote if it were to be contracted, or if the private company were running it on their own and just funding the whole operation from their own revenue, then there would not be that we might not know what the cost would be.
I think probably the problem that I'm struggling with the most here is that council has directed to purchase more buses. We're just not receiving them. So, I mean, in the market right now, there's just not enough buses being provided to the city of Ottawa, despite the fact that they have been paid for. So, I mean, even if we were to say, okay, let's do this, like, are those buses even available for delivery? So if like we were to receive the entire suite of fleet that we have ordered, would that provide us with enough buses to run both the system that we have right now and to expand into the rural area in a meaningful way, in the way that we're looking to receive some clarity on through this motion?
The buses that are on order today are for our existing service. If the service were to be expanded, whether in a rural area or in the urban area, there'd be additional buses required.
So the buses that are coming, that I mean, I don't know how many. Maybe you have that at hand. How many we're waiting on from the industry?
We've got on order. I'm going to say it's about. I'm going from memory. It's about 390 buses that are on order, and about 100 of those are here so far.
Okay, so if we're getting 200 more buses, and we currently have nearly 500 buses on the road.
Maybe I should clarify, these are all replacement buses that are replacing all of these new buses that are on order right now are to replace life expired buses. They're not to expand the fleet or expand the service.
Okay, understood. But I mean, we are running some of these buses that are going to be replaced by these ones that are on order currently. So it's not like, so could we potentially extend the life of some of the buses that are being replaced by these new ones that are coming in order to have a larger fleet to run a program like this?
It may be possible. Some of these buses are well beyond their normal retirement life. For some of the ones that are in better shape or younger, it may be possible to put some money into a life extension on those buses. But that might only be for, 3, 4, 5 more years, not the full 15-year life of a bus, of course.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Okay. I think that like all of these sorts of ideas and options should be explored as part of the conversation that we're going to have about this. Because what I'm what I'm worried about is that, okay, sure, council directs, let's buy 100 more buses to be able to run a rural program, and then industry not being able to provide that for 5 to 10 years. I mean, we're already dealing with quite a few delays when it comes to delivery of new buses. I don't want to just exacerbate that problem by like it's I'm not saying that you're being deliberately just disingenuous, but to say like, okay, council can make a decision to purchase more buses, but if there's no buses available for us to be able to purchase, then that doesn't really make much of a difference to us at this point. You know what I mean?
Yep, I'm not to be argumentative at all, but I would just
Please,
say that any private company would be competing for the same in the same marketplace with purchase a new vehicle.
Unless they already have a fleet that's just sitting there right now that they're looking to use.
Yes. I would just, I don't know that that's the case anywhere. If there were buses that private companies owned, we would probably already know about them because they probably would have tendered them to us in our search for secondhand buses.
Yeah, that's fair. No, I don't find you argumentative at all. And no, I appreciate that. I just want to get a kind of a clear picture of what this could look like. So while we're doing this sort of analysis, I think that these sorts of that this context also needs to be clearly explained within any report that comes forward to be discussed, because I do want to make sure that we're making the best decision and getting the best bang for our buck. I think it's pretty clear that over the course of the last 6 years or so, many people have decided to take up rural living, whether that was because of a newly revoked promise of being able to work remotely, or just for a different lifestyle, or one that fits the lifestyle that they want to live a little bit better, which means that there are people that we could be capturing with public transit that we're not. And given the extension of Line 1 and the desire for us to get more people on the train and in the bus system post that launch, I think that we need to be looking at expanded service into the rural area. And so having an idea of what that could look like, whether it's a private option or having OC Transpo do it, is important. I know that there's an inquiry in right now in the East End from our friends in Rockland and other townships nearby that would be interested in contracting service from OC Transpo to be providing these sorts of connection style or shuttles from the rural area into the train to promote a modal shift. And I think that would probably be good for us and good for the system, and frankly, good for our transportation system writ large. So I think that having a very clear picture of what that could look like would be important. Would be probably the most important part of this discussion. So just appreciate if that analysis could be done so that we can have a more fulsome discussion when this comes forward. Is that cool? All right. Thanks.
That's cool. Thank you, Councilor Luloff. Councilor Brown.
Thank you very much, Chair. And Pat, I'd like to thank you and your team for all of the assistance that you've provided in crafting the motion and providing that expert level of advice as we try to get to a place where something positive can happen. I want to make sure that committee and the public are clear as to what we're talking about today. And we're not talking about a particular service type or service level today. What we're talking about is going back, gathering that data so staff can come back and present those findings. Is that your understanding of the motion as well?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I know for my own ward in the past, there has been RTA service provided to villages that now are in the RTB area. And I'm speaking specifically about North Gore and Cars, because the service didn't warrant, or the ridership rather didn't warrant that level of service, and a decision of council was made to remove that type of service, the daily commuter service, from these villages. So I know changes can be made, but we usually do that with stats, with figures, with data, so we can ensure that we're making informed decisions. And that's what the intent of the motion that I've tabled today is to do. We want to make sure that we're making these informed decisions. The challenge that I have, of course, is that it's very easy to get members of council or the public into two camps. You either want public service or you want private service. I honestly believe there's an option here where we can see benefit of both of those being provided in the city of Ottawa. I want to ensure that if we move forward, we're respectful of the decisions that council has made in the past, but we're not shackling ourselves to it's either OC's way or no way, because I think we lose out in the rural area if that's the attitude council determines to take. Of course, staff will do whatever council directs, and I can appreciate the role and the position that you and your team are in as we move forward, hopefully with this motion. Are there any other implementation challenges that committee should be aware of that aren't covered in the motion or that might not be uncovered with the direction that's being sought here today?
So, Mr. Chair, I think that's what the motion would ask us to do, is to find whether there are any constraints and points that would guide council's decision, and that's what we would do. As we laid out in the staff comment on the original motion, we need to make our conclusions consistent with the current direction that we have from council, and we would point out to you if there's anything that you've asked us in this motion to consider that would be at variance from current council policy. So that you could consider whether you were going to advance any change to policy. And of course, as I said in the earlier, or as I said in our discussions and in the staff comment, we'll be working within the framework that the province has. The province is the responsible authority for intermunicipal transportation, and so we respect their laws or anything that would cross municipal boundaries.
Thank you very much. And my last question to you, just to confirm, if committee does pass this motion today and council carries the motion as it's been tabled today at ARAC, staff are able to undertake this work?
We are.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Scrimger, for being here to speak on behalf of OC Transpo today and for confirming that this is implementable on your end. And I want to thank Councillor Brown for his efforts in this regard. I've played a minor supporting role, but he has driven this motion and the conversation. And I want to thank everyone who's been involved in the conversation. This is an important topic in rural Ottawa. And I want to make it clear and echo what Councillor Brown has just said, is that this does not make a decision on how we move forward in rural Ottawa with transit, but sets up the conversation in the right way to explore all possible options for service delivery for people in rural Ottawa, which is the job of this committee, is to consider first and foremost what is in the best interest of rural residents and how we implement that plan. So much appreciated for everyone's involvement in the conversation today, and I do fully support the motion and hope that all of my colleagues will do the same. So with that said, is the motion carried?
Carried.
Thank you very much. So moving on to, I believe we have a motion from Councillor Skalski, which will require a suspension of the rules. So I will pass it over to Councillor Skalski now for that.
Thank you, Chair. So that the rules of procedure be suspended to consider the following motion at today's meeting, as the matter is time sensitive, as excess soils will start being moved again shortly with the onset of construction season, especially once the spring load restrictions are lifted. So whereas the management, transport, reuse, and disposal of excess soil, also known as fill, is governed by Ontario Regulation 40619 on-site and excess soil management. And whereas under this regulation, sites receiving more than 10,000 cubic meters of excess soil must be registered in a public online registry administered by the Resource Productivity and Recovery Authority, or the RPRA. And whereas the province does not require municipalities to be notified when a large excess soil reuse site is registered within their boundaries, and whereas the province does not require that a fill management plan be prepared or made public for large reuse sites, but only recommends such plans as a best practice. And whereas without mandatory municipal notification or required fill management plans, municipalities may be unaware of significant soil importation activities until impacts occur. And whereas the uncontrolled importation of large volumes of excess soil can generate substantial truck traffic, road degradation, dust, odor, noise, erosion, stormwater impacts, invasive species spread, and potential groundwater concerns. And whereas in the absence of advance notice and proactive planning requirements, municipalities are limited to reactive enforcement of existing bylaws after impacts to residents, infrastructure, and the natural environment have already occurred. And whereas several Ontario municipalities have adopted bylaws or site plan control measures to address excess soil reuse activities in order to mitigate negative impacts and close regulatory gaps. So therefore be it resolved that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend council direct staff to report back by Q3 2027 with the review of how other Ontario municipalities regulate or oversee excess soil reuse sites, including mechanisms such as site plan control, haul route agreements, fill management plan requirements, road use agreements, and nuisance mitigation measures. And as part of this report and within the confines of applicable provincial statute and regulation, staff provide recommendations to council on how to best strengthen the city's regulatory or oversight approaches to excess soil reuse and disposal sites so as to close gaps that otherwise limit the city's ability to ensure that these properties are managed appropriately. And in the interim, by the end of Q2 2026, staff bring forward for council's approval an amendment to the site alteration bylaw 2024-448, requiring owners or operators of excess soil reuse sites or of registered projects using such sites within the city of Ottawa to notify the city and the local ward councillor within 5 days of registering with the province.
Thank you very much, Councillor Skalski. I'm not seeing any questions for you or for staff. Is that motion carried?
Carried.
Thank you very much. We'll now move on to notices of motion for consideration of a subsequent meeting. And I do believe we're going right back to Councillor Skalski, who has one for herself and one on behalf of Councillor Kitts, and I will leave it up to her as to which one to start with.
All right. Okay, well, let's do the one for, this is on behalf of Councillor Kitts. It's called Improving Road Safety at 10th Line Road and Wall Road. So whereas the intersection of 10th Line Road and Wall Road is a rural intersection experiencing increased traffic volumes due to ongoing growth and development in the area, and whereas recent collision data provided by the Ottawa Police Service indicates an emerging trend with 6 reported collisions in 2024 and 2025 combined, and highlights the importance of ongoing efforts to support driver awareness and road safety. And whereas the intersection meets the city's traffic signal warrant criteria and a permanent solution such as traffic signals or a roundabout is anticipated to be considered through the 2027 budget process, and any interim measures would be subject to staff review, prioritization, and available funding. And whereas the city is implementing interim safety improvements at this location, including enhanced warning signage, larger stop signs, pavement marking changes, and lighting adjustments. And whereas the intersection does not currently meet city's requirements or provincial recommendations for the installation of flashing mounted beacons, and whereas flashing warning beacons mounted on signs are a relatively low-cost intervention that can improve driver awareness and reduce the risk of angle and high-speed collisions at rural intersections. Therefore, be it resolved that staff be directed to install mounting flashing warning beacons on signs at the intersection of 10th Line Road and Wall Road as an interim safety measure, and be it further resolved that funding for this work be allocated from the existing general traffic services operations budget, and be it further resolved that staff continue to monitor collision data at this intersection and report back as part of future budget considerations for a permanent intersection control solution in consultation with the ward councillor. Okay, and then, oh, you're just, it's going to be me reading. Okay, here we go. So the next motion, this is for rural home infrastructure upgrade financing program. So whereas rural residents in the city of Ottawa rely on private infrastructure, including drilled wells, septic systems, and permanent standby power systems to safely occupy their homes, And whereas having running water and functioning sanitary systems is an essential upgrade that can put an unexpected pressure on family budgets. And whereas climate change is increasing pressure on private water and wastewater systems, including more frequent and severe drought conditions, extreme rainfall events, and power outages that directly affect rural households. And whereas this year's exceptional drought conditions have highlighted the vulnerability of private wells and the growing need for resilient water infrastructure in rural communities. And whereas the City of Ottawa already operates the Better Homes Ottawa program, which provides financing to homeowners through a local improvement charge model that allows upgrades to be repaid over time through the property tax bill. And whereas this financing structure has proven to be an effective tool for enabling homeowners to make major investments that improve environmental sustainability and climate resilience. And whereas the Better Homes Ottawa Loan Program is scheduled to undergo comprehensive program review, including alignment with Federation of Canadian Municipalities partnership requirements. And whereas there is currently no comparable financing program available to rural residents to support essential infrastructure upgrades such as wells, septic systems, and permanently installed standby generators. And therefore be it resolved that City Council directs staff to include as part of the upcoming Better Homes Ottawa program review, an assessment of opportunities to expand or adapt the program to support rural infrastructure upgrades, including private wells, septic systems, and permanently installed standby generators, and be it further resolved that staff be directed to evaluate the feasibility of delivering such a program through either an expansion of the existing Better Homes Ottawa financing program or a new standalone program specifically designed for rural properties and private servicing infrastructure. And be it further resolved that that staff report include options for financing using a local improvement charge or similar property-based repayment model, potential funding sources, including federal and provincial climate adaptation and resilience programs, eligibility criteria that prioritize climate resilience, water security and protection of groundwater resources, and a proposed implementation timeline and estimated financial impact to the city. And be it further resolved that staff report back to the appropriate standing committee and council as part of the Better Homes Ottawa Loan Program review anticipated in Q3 2027.
Thank you very much, Councillor Skalski. We look
you.
forward to discussing those at our next meeting. Are there any inquiries? Seeing none. Is there any other business? Seeing none. All right, we are adjourned. The next meeting will take place on Thursday, May the 7th, 2026. Thank you very much, everybody.